On today's episode of The Glue Guys, an absolute rager of a pod. Mailbag has been ripped open. We're diving in, grabbing those questions out. Trade deadline, hot burning questions.
Gonna rip the bag.
Welcome back to The Glue Guys. This is Mike Arizona Brad. Check us out on Twitter at BK Glue Guys. Netsdaily.com. The Athletic, now a subsidiary of the New York Times.
Wow.
Brad.
Wow.
The Nets are
back.
kind of. Not really. Actually,
we've been on a losing
very
streak.
far from back.
I like how you got Netsdaily. I like this intro is just getting locked in. It's getting cemented, minted. It's
so
an NFT.
gimmicky
Let's
now.
NFT it, Mike.
I wish, like, there was a day when I used to do this thing very smooth and announcer like. Now it's just we're pulling every vocal cord I got to really get
the
this
Breakfast
done.
Club. It's what. Hey, Mike, how are you? Did you
Hey,
stay up?
oh.
Did you watch the game?
I watched most of the game and
That
then
was too late.
I passed out.
You know what it is? It also
I'm
gives me
old.
license to be I'm like it's already like 12:30. Tomorrow's screwed anyways. May as well just stay up and dick around some more. And that's what I did. And I went to bed at like 2:30 like a complete idiot. So now I feel like an alien.
There is a strange psychological effect of that. I stayed up long enough already. I'm just gonna it's the marathon effect of like I'm going through it. I'm cracking open. I went to there's a store in Virginia called Total Wine and More. Shout out Total Wine and More.
Amazing.
It's like a warehouse of liquor. It's fantastic.
Great.
And they had $3 bottles of wine.
Wow.
And your boy Mike Smelt got 4 of those.
No,
4
you
Merlots.
didn't. You dog.
For the price of $12
Wow.
for 4 bottles of
That
So I've
is
been
a crime.
diving into the disgusting
You
cheap
dipped into
Merlot.
the $3 Bordeaux.
When
huh?
you get to that late at night, it's really a nice. Particularly.
You
for
don't
a
stay up
cheap
till
person
2:30
like myself.
not doing nothing. Let me tell you. I mean, I'm right there with you.
What was your game take? Because you were on the Twitch.
We were cleanly
had a
streaming. We have a blurry stream now. Well, it's because
Pixelated stream.
It's because I got copyright striked. So now I have to I have to fudge it. Yeah,
I can't believe Blake Griffin, the Blake Griffin game.
Yeah, truly.
6 for 10 for the field, 2 for 6 from 3. Actually hitting 3-point shots and 17 points.
Do you find there's maybe a little
Blake
parallel
Griffin.
here between the logic of like, hey, things are in disrepair, so I'm just going to stay up late and ruin tomorrow anyways, and the current state of your Brooklyn Nets, Mike? There's something there. It's like things are already
Explore that.
Like Kyrie's only playing 25% of the games of this season, and
Yes.
that doesn't have a conclusion in sight. There isn't a resolution there. What's the
I
resolution?
think resolution's coming in the matter of 6 weeks.
Oh, okay, Mike. You got hot takes?
I mean, I don't want to go too crazy. Like, I do think
Whoa, this is crazy,
vaccine
Mike.
mandates are going to change.
Where's the horn? Drop the air horn. Drop the funk flex.
The laser beam's the worst one I got.
I like the laser beam for you.
Rocket launch. That's a rocket launch. Doesn't sound like it. But this is based on nothing besides the fact that I'm just kind of reading the various tea leaves. that
Tea
have been
leaves
planted.
reading has been prodigious over the years. So
Yeah,
these are serious.
Across the globe. So, anyone can look. This is a trade deadline pod. We're gonna rip open that mailbag, get the chainsaw out, dig into that mailbag. But real quick, we're just look at the Omicron data. Go to the NewYorkTimes.com. Friend of the show, New York Times. Look at the Omicron
yourself-
spike.
Yeah,
What?
pour a cup of coffee and sit in front of some Omicron data. You know,
Get
for fun.
yourself some Omicron data.
Yeah.
It's dramatically dropping. Dr. Anthony Fauci himself has said that Omicron essentially could give us the ability to have a very normal lifestyle in the matter of a month or so, because there's going to be so much vaccine plus natural.
Did I tell you that
immunization?
I had COVID last week? I was testing positive. Well,
You
I
officially
did. I
had
finally
COVID.
because then like I was like feeling under the weather, and then I was taking tests and it was coming up negative, and then finally my taste and sense of smell just completely vanished. I had nothing. I ate a whole lemon, Mike. I ate fistfuls of anchovies, washing them down with fruit smoothies.
Motor
Nothing
oil.
mattered. Nothing mattered. It was actually really interesting, and it's business idea for you, Mike. A weight loss pill that all it does is nuke your sense of taste and smell, because there's no reason to eat bad foods if you can't taste it. It just makes you feel slightly more tired. That's all.
I feel like though there's got to be some psychological impact of never like not having taste. Like it by not having taste, it must like diminish your endorphins on
Dude,
some level.
I'm gonna
and
tell
you're
you,
just more depressed.
It was freeing. I felt free for the first time. I realized that I've been enslaved to my taste buds this whole time.
So did you actually?
It was like
eat
waking
healthy
up out of the
foods?
Matrix. I came through the goopy. Sorry, what did you say?
Okay, good. So we're now officially part of the New York Times. And headline: New York Times is Brian Egan says
ate a lemon.
COVID good.
I ate a lemon.
COVID good. No, I don't know anything. I'm not an insider to the Eric Adams administration. I do just think
We could have been
something's-
though. We could have been anyway. Sorry, I keep
Yeah, we
interrupting you. Yeah.
I do think something's going to happen. The matter, I say 6 weeks because the COVID Omicron spike is happening now in New York. We're about to hit the bottom in a good way, not a bad bottom, but a good bottom. The fat bottom of Omicron.
Beautiful.
Fat
Well
bottom
done.
girls. It's a song by Queen.
You're about to fall off and you landed
always right on the edge
somersaulted
here.
perfectly onto your feet.
No, we are entering a point where things are going to get opened up. Masks are going to be put away on some level because there's so many people who have either had Omicron or are vaccinated. The Pfizer has asked the FDA and gained, I think, approval for kids 6 months old to. So basically, the entire population, 6 months old to 5 years old, will be able to get shots. The entire population will now have the option to be vaccinated, which will help some too.
Great.
And so
Okay, so
we've talked about
you're
the
betting
politics
big.
at the moment.
You're betting big that Kyrie's coming back is the big takeaway.
I do think by playoffs, I really think the only reason why I wouldn't is if a wild new variant came along that was like Omicron, but more dangerous in terms of like if a variant comes along, everyone should understand that things are going to stay the same. I do think where the case numbers are going to get so low again in New York, a very highly vaccinated place, that to have the keys to New York City, the de Blasio administration's local mandate, to persist into the summer, which is when the playoff basketball is going to be happening, I think it would be unusual. I think things are going to change back to more normal way of life. And also, we talk about politics at the moment. We were on a Twitter Spaces, where it got quite heated.
That was great. We should do that. You should do that all the time, Mike.
All the time. I love Twitter Space. I'm obsessed with Twitter Spaces. I love the people on it. I love the conversation. It's a lot of smart conversation. I know the reaction is like, oh, these are all Twitter people. They're going to be mad. I don't know. I found everyone's been great so far. I think politics is going to become like maybe health-wise we should keep these mandates, but politicians are going to want to make sort of loud pronouncements about how they've, of course, classically, the George Bush standing on top of a aircraft carrier saying mission accomplished before, what was it, the war in Iraq or the war in Afghanistan, right? And then we, of course, were there for many, many more years. Politicians like to say mission accomplished. And I think they're going to want to say mission accomplished. And part of that would be opening up things. Just a small Kyrie. Okay. And again, I don't support the fact that he hasn't gotten vaccinated. He should get vaccinated for his health, the health of the people around him. But I'm just saying, brass tacks, cold-hearted. Anyways, should we do?
You want to get in that
mailbag?
You want to reach in? You want to reach your hand in? I got a good one for you to start off.
I'm ready for you.
From Cheerboy. That's Ian. Ian. Ian Eagle. There's nobody else on the planet that pronounces it Ian, right? Is there anyone?
He's literally the only person.
Is that like an English
And I feel
thing?
bad for Ian Begley, friend of our Twitter account, who I'm sure has been asked many times, is it Ian or Ian? And Ian Begley's probably saying, everyone else in the world is an Ian. Ian's the only guy who's an Ian.
I'm trying to honor if you sign off with a name, I'm just going to use that name, not dox you fully. So that's for anyone, for future email sphere people. That's, if you don't sign off as anything, I'm going whole turkey on your whole last name and everything. Anyways, so Ian says, let me know how out of line this comparison is. Okay, Steve Nash is to coaching.
Wait. Let's do before we even get into it.
Okay. God, those were the days, Mike. Those were the days.
When I hear that, I think of crappy beers being in a basement.
That basement, the submarine basement.
Awful sounding podcasts.
Yeah.
Probably wearing coats while we were doing the podcast because it was so cold.
God. The amount of time I had on the gumption to make those drops is it's a whole different person, Mike. Anyways, let me know how out of line this comparison is, says Ian. Steve Nash is to coaching what J.J. Abrams is to directing. Okay? I think J.J. Abrams is best known as a guy who can build a wonderful sandbox but has no ability or interest in putting a satisfying ending together. He will pose endless questions and make all these intriguing decisions, but it never really adds up to anything. I always start the story intrigued and end it scratching my head, saying, I guess it was fine, but I really don't know about how it all came together. It's always got a bit of an aftertaste. And obviously he goes on to make a very compelling case for why Steve Nash is similar. Do you accept this premise, Mike? At its face?
I have a similar, and I will add this. J.J. Abrams is a fantastic caster of movies. He identifies talent. I mean, if you look at that Star Trek movie reboot, the amount of talent he shoved into that movie and all the various roles that he did is extremely impressive. And not that Steve Nash picked the Nets, but the Nets are a well-casted team in terms of starring roles and all these interesting role players. You have sort of like the Chewbacca-like James Johnson figure, if we're going to go that far. So I agree with this. I just want to be clear. This is an insult, right?
It is.
And I'm not saying whether that's a bad thing. It is an insult to compare someone to J.J. Abrams. Because what J.J. Abrams did to The Force Awakens, and we do understand that the Rise of Skywalker was overly managed by Disney. We're not owned by Disney, so we can say this. It seemed like that movie got run through multiple groups at Disney to say, oh, it needs to be this, it needs to be that. We need a Baba Frick to sell some toys. I don't know if you remember Babu Frick.
I think I do.
He's the little mechanic
he's a little
guy who figured out C-3PO's head.
Yeah.
Like Chew. I don't want to. Can I talk about the plot of Rise of Skywalker?
Mike, it's really interesting. I never see you as alive as when you're talking. You have an effervescence about you all of a sudden.
The Force Awakens was a disaster on the scale of anything we've ever seen in art.
Wow.
Okay,
I agree. I'll take Phantom
Here's
Menace.
What the Force Awakens.
I go Phantom Menace over Force Awakens.
No.
I do.
Phantom Menace.
I do.
You're wrong about Phantom Menace.
I'm not.
The second one. What was the second one after Phantom Menace?
Attack of the Clones or some such.
So that's the true error in the prequel
let's
trilogy.
Not. Do we have to go? We're gonna go. We'll save it for the
because
end.
Ultimately Phantom Menace falls because like.
I'm
the
here.
Phantom Menace
I'm here
I
for the
actually think
space
is
politics.
fine.
Give me some, space, lobbying for the transgalactic trade routes or whatever.
I love taxes. And that's what that movie's about.
Yeah,
taxes and tariffs.
But before we get too into it,
Force Awakens was a disaster of an epic scale.
Do you think these are hot
these
takes?
people
Everyone
were
knows
alive and in the movie. Brian, Han Solo, alive and in the movie. I should say his name. Harrison Ford, decent actor. Carrie Fisher, alive and in the movie. And you had the ability to put Mark Hamill in the movie. They didn't do that because they were saving him for what would end up being Last Jedi, which J.J. Abrams had nothing to do with. And what they did was they put those people together. They could have done anything. They could have continued on the legacy. They could have been the people in power, and there could have been some terroristic group out there, and they would have had to confront that, or they could have done anything. And they chose to basically recreate A New Hope. And they had a new Death Star thingy, and they had this. We had no clue of why the rebels were back to being rebels again. you had this one shot of bringing back all these beloved characters, the most beloved characters in film, and they decided to just redo A New Hope, which is like
these
which
takes,
is a
these takes
disaster.
are 10 years old now. These are 10-year-old takes, Michael.
So here's what I'm going to say about the Nets. So if you've been on the Twitter Spaces, we talked about Twitter Spaces. So much of Twitter Spaces has been focused on Steve Nash is bad. He is a bad coach. That is what the common take has become. To boil that down even further, he is a guy who does not improve a team. He does not give a team an edge via his coaching. And I can say where I'm watching these games now, I do agree with that on some level, right? Like he's not this wizard who is he's not a Nick Nurse type. Where Nick Nurse we now think of as this guy who you give him sort of athletic, switchable players. He's going to have a really great defense. He's going to be able to sort of coax offense in certain possessions at a really high level, and he's going to be able to coach his team to a higher plane. Eric Spoelstra has become that too. Rick Carlisle used to be thought of that way. Now, I mean, you really can't think of Rick Carlisle being that anymore, particularly what's happening in Indiana. Steve Nash does not elevate what he has on the floor. But I'll give you I'm going to say this is a huge difference. This team that Steve Nash is coaching is so disjointed by the half game of Kyrie, by James Harden being in and out of the lineup a little bit, Kevin Durant being out, Joe Harris being out, LaMarcus Aldridge being out. Like, Steve Nash has never had a consistent lineup for a 15-game stretch. 15 games. He has never had that. It's always been some massive injury, some big trade, some guy coming in. The team has talent, but the talent is, on the sidelines for most of the games. So while I would love if Steve could take the collection of Bruce Brown and James Johnson and those guys and, eke out some special victories, I mean, he almost has kind of done that, right? I mean, the Suns game wasn't out of hand. What was the game before? It was like the Nuggets game or
the Golden State was before
Golden State, and they almost beat Golden State. They came back and gave it a good rallying try. I think Steve Nash is still a positive coach than a negative,
Sure.
But he's a certain kind of coach. He's not a tactician.
Well, here's and piggybacking on that, I think where the analogy falls apart for me is that in this concept of J.J. Abrams, he is the auteur. He's asserting control. He's doing the world building. Whereas I actually think Steve Nash is just another character inside of the story. Like, he is not, pulling strings, as it were. He is in place as sort of, the emotional, glue, linchpin of what is now the sort of end result of the player empowerment movement, which is the player empowerment team, right? The whole thing is sort of like being managed from the bottom up by the players. And we need a kind of figurehead kind of style coach to plausibly fit it all together. But I would say that, I agree in a lot of ways, but the only thing is, I just don't think that Nash, asserts that amount of authority. I guess he does. He's in control of these, bonkers rotations, but, I don't know.
Yeah, I think if we're going to compare him to a director, I think of him more like a Ron Howard.
Great.
Ron Howard is the ultimate incompetency, right? He can make a lot of different kinds of movies. They're pretty good. I mean, Apollo 13 is a great movie. Well done. Maybe Tom Hanks had a lot more to do with that than
Whatever happened to Gary Sinise? Gary Sinise?
Gary Sinise.
Sinise?
He's really dove into his charities, and I think he's on NCIS or one of those shows. He was on one of those shows forever.
I was going to push back on the Harrison Ford thing. I actually think Harrison Ford's overrated. It just occurred to me now because, have you ever seen Harrison Ford not be Harrison Ford in a movie? If part of acting is the range, he's got no range. Man's got no range.
Well, yeah. If you want range, sure, but if you want Harrison Ford, there's only Harrison Ford.
That's my point. If being Harrison Ford he's great at being Harrison Ford. If acting,
that's enough for me. That's enough. It's enough for me. I mean, have you seen Air Force One? It's great. No, it's Harrison Ford on a plane as president.
I like those movies. All right, let's see.
I know. But I do want to make this Nash point, and I don't know if we have any other Nash questions, but it's this is a bad run for Steve Nash. It's a bad run for him as a coach. He didn't challenge the play when the little birdie, aka the refs, told him to challenge the play, and then it came back that and the 2 minutes report. Remember how we in the Spencer Dinwiddie era, how much we cared about the last 2 minute reports because the Nets always got screwed.
Glued to the L2M.
That was like basically our podcast for 2 years.
Yeah.
How Kessler Edwards, like he should have challenged a play, or at least there's some indication after the fact that the refs got it wrong. And all this is a bad run for Steve Nash. I'm still just holding on to the boat here. We're in turbulent seas, and I'm just projecting forward in March when Joe Harris, Kevin Durant are back. James Harden is still playing for the team. Kessler Edwards is getting buku valuable minutes in this role. He had a really good game against the Suns. I'm just projecting forward, and maybe the Nets make a trade to get another bench piece that's actually can do something, as opposed to like Blake had a good game, but as opposed to Blake, Bruce Brown, James Johnson is on and off, Bembry's on and off. They kind of need a more reliable.
Not a whole lot of action on the Paul Millsap front. Haven't heard much about that.
Surprising. People aren't beating down the door of the Nets practice facility to get Paul Millsap.
We're keeping an eye on it. Next up, Cheer Boy. This is Andrew. It's not as fun.
Don't say the last names.
I might go back. I might just dox people.
Yeah, what do people care? How is this going to possibly, unless if they say something in the email that's bad?
I think they also don't know to sign off with nobody signs off with their last name. We're not writing.
I do
with a quill and pen
doing
here, quill and ink. Anyways, he says, I'm going to stay just because I've already not doxed him, but next one I'm doxing. Okay, that's happening. Hey fellas, with Harden possibly not wanting to be with the Nets, is there a world where the team is better off moving him now rather than waiting to address the situation this summer?
Ooh, interesting question.
His uncertainty could be a dark cloud over the team for the remainder of the season. A rumored return of Ben Simmons, Tyrese Maxey, and pick/fillers sounds pretty solid, especially considering how well Maxey has played this year. This is exactly this is music to Morey's ears. This is what he wants to hear right now.
Is this Daryl Morey, Andrew? I won't say your last name.
It would give the team 2 ball handlers, an elite defender, and if picks are included, Sean Marks would have more flexibility to make trades in future years. Thanks. He's got a point though, and it's worth considering. Though I am not ready to buy into the propaganda. Frankly, let's call it what it is. That James Harden is upset with the weather and the taxes in New York to the point where he wants to move to beautiful, sunny Philadelphia. Pennsylvania.
It is always sunny in Philadelphia.
True. Wow.
Sorry, that's a lame.
Like,
I love this question. I absolutely love the thinking behind it. I will disagree with the premise because I don't know if Harden's sort of dalliances with Daryl, new book coming out from Nicholas Sparks very soon, is a dark cloud over this team, because it seems like, particularly from Woj's report, at least internally, that Harden, it's not like Harden's like disgruntled or he's like really upset and he's ruining the mood of the team. I do think there's definitely some discord between Harden and the Nets on some level, and that's why we're getting this report. But I think like player to player, the players probably really appreciate James Harden. And it seems like as long as Kyrie and Kevin Durant like James Harden, and James Harden likes to play with them, which he will be playing with them in a month or so when KD's back, everything will be fine. And so I think the problem is if you make this trade now with Kevin Durant hurt, Kyrie playing halftime, and then you're bringing in Ben Simmons, and we have no clue what Ben Simmons is going to be like. Like whether you believe mental health has been a problem for him, or if that's an excuse that's being thrown out there to keep him away from the 76ers.
I got to tell you, as an excuse, that's a pretty racy excuse to use. That's like yes. The kind of excuse like when you're a kid, like, can I pretend like a grandparent died to get out of school or something? It's like, I probably shouldn't. That's bad karma.
I think it was like 5th grade. I used to pretend I would go to, it was like Wednesdays. There's a reason why it was that day, but I would go into the bathroom and acted like I threw up. I would tell the teacher, I did it like 5 Wednesdays in a row. I mean, I didn't make the sound. I would go in,
splash some
and I would come out. Yeah. I would save some bolognese in my pocket and splash it on my face.
But you would always have bolognese in your pocket anyways. I find out
that was just a standard thing.
Yeah.
And I would tell her that I threw up, and then I get sent home. And the reason why was because I just wanted to like hang out at the house
I love
and
that.
like watch TV. And so, but that's not quite as crooked as using mental health.
It's right
and
there. It's right there, though.
And I don't think that that would be really pretty
It's
poor
poor.
form.
That's poor form. You don't want to do that.
Yeah,
That's a
and I
little
don't really
dastardly.
think. Yeah, so I don't think it's that. You don't want to have the KD injury recovery, halftime playing basketball Kyrie, and what the hell is Ben Simmons on a team that has championship aspirations. Like that is a worse situation to deal with than maybe the dark cloud of James Harden's future hanging over the team. And ultimately, like having James Harden on the team, James Harden's a better player right now than Ben Simmons. We've talked about this before, though. The Ben Simmons, Maxey, and picks trade, which I think it would have to be if you're the Nets to do it, is not the worst thing in the world. Though, I will say this, last thing on this. Kevin O'Connor and Bill Simmons were talking about trade deadline stuff on one of the more recent pods that Bill Simmons had. And they both adamantly said that the Nets are shutting down all possible trade talk involving James Harden right now. They are adamant that they will not even entertain a chance of James Harden going to Philly. They're not going to do it. Now, maybe things will change in the offseason, but right now they're shutting it down. We had the Woj story again where they said they're not taking calls on James Harden. I like the thought experiment here by Andrew. It's just not happening. And I said this at the last pod. The end of the last episode, I talked about the Joe Tsai, Daryl Morey thing. And I'll just really quickly rephrase. Daryl Morey had the Hong Kong tweet. Joe Tsai was the loudest owner in American sports to come out against that tweet and the idea that Daryl Morey put out there. Whether you agree or disagree, Joe Tsai probably hates Daryl Morey more than anyone in the NBA, more than even Tillman Fertitta. So I would guarantee Joe Tsai, who's very involved with this team, would not be loving the fact that he's going to hand James Harden to the 76ers.
Love that. Love that take, Mike. Love that. Are you ready for the next one?
Yes.
Next up, this one's great. You're going to like this one. Next up, True Boy. That's Usama Mansour.
Perfect.
That's a great name. Usama Mansour. I feel like that. I mean, I feel like I'm Bruce Buffer, whatever his name is, like bringing him into the cage. Usama says, "Hey, huge fan. Huge fan back. Quick question for the pod. You mentioned in the last few pods that if this Kyrie situation doesn't get solved, then Nets would want to be in the 5th seed. Currently, they're in the 6th seed, and with Durant out, they won't be winning a lot of these games. Do you honestly think if the Nets were to use this road court advantage scheme, win a chip? Do you honestly think? Do they win a chip? I think they can, but it's definitely a challenge. Okay, so Mike, the question is here:
Yes, sir.
Are they hedging their bets against Eric Adams? Knees weak, mom spaghetti, not at come March, not reversing his mandates. He gets nervous.
Why?
He's the pressure. He buckles to the pressure of the domineering left or whatever. I don't know what these politics. I don't do politics, Mike. What happens?
I don't know.
Are we hedging our bet? Are we purposefully getting into the 5th and 6th seeds, like the way that I have conspiratorially suggested?
The Nets are not purposefully doing it, but it is happening.
Are you sure? Can you prove that?
Can I tell you, the Nets are closer to the play-in tournament than the number 1 seed.
I was like, somebody was saying that in the chat last night, and I was like, nah. And then I was like, oh boy, this is actually we're comfortably in, but like still, it's like this is Charlotte's coming up fast.
They're only a win over Charlotte. They're a game and a half because Charlotte has 2 more losses, but they have 1 more win than Charlotte. Charlotte is 7. The Nets are 6th. Now, the Nets are only 3 back from the Bulls, who are the top seed in the East. And no one has any thought that the Bulls are this dominating team. I mean, they've had their own issues. The 76ers are 2, obviously, with what they've got going on with Ben Simmons. The Heat are... They at one point were moving up. They've lost the past 3. Basically, every team in the East, there's not like a perfect team right now. Anyways, so once Kevin Durant comes back, and if Kyrie's allowed to play full time, I think the Nets would almost like immediately shoot up the standings, and they would probably become the 1 seed or the 2 seed. And maybe this question isn't here. The road court advantage thing is a real thing. Um, the problem that you run into, I guess, by doing the road court advantage play is like as you go around from round to round and the games get tougher and tougher, getting that like, what do you weigh, Brian? This is the ultimate question: is
My body
would
weight?
you rather have Kyrie for 4 games, or would you rather have the game 7 at home without Kyrie? Because
I'm big on game sevens. I'm big on game sevens.
even though we're a Nets
It's
podcast,
tough. This is tough, Mike.
it's really tough. Like ultimately, I think like the mathematics, the analytics would say Kyrie is more impactful than home court advantage. Like
Our home court
an
advantage
extra-
sucks. Let's just call it what it is. Like we I
Yeah.
mean, we're currently not, to call it an advantage is,
Yeah, so I agree with that. It's like it's not like the Nets have like a massive home court advantage to begin with. They're actually worse at home this season than they are on the road. They're 12-13 at home, 17-8 on the road. But that's like a quirky thing that actually doesn't persist into the playoffs.
well, is that the Kyrie data that you're looking for, I guess?
Yeah, but what has been the Nets record with Kyrie even? I mean, that's we can't even go into that because Kyrie, like, there's a game that they missed with Harden, and so he's been by himself, and those teams are really bad when he's just by himself. So I would rather have Kyrie for 4 games than 4 games at home. Again, though, to state back to my earlier position, I do think the vaccine mandate's going to change. And I think ultimately,
But this is,
they're
I mean,
gonna
the
have a full
hypothetical here is
the hypothetical.
great question, Usama. Who knows? But I do still think that the conspiracy is real, and that as soon as we want to flip the switch on winning games, like that.
Can I tell you though? One addendum. I would rather have the 1 or 2 seed I'd rather have, if my ranking of seeds would be 1, 2, and then either be 5, 6, or 5 or 6. Because if you have 1 or 2, that means you play the playing teams.
Mhm.
But one of the playing teams is Toronto. And like the Nets are never gonna, like Kyrie's never gonna play. I don't know. It's so complicated because if you're the 3 seed, the 4 seed, the 5 seed, or the 6 seed, you're playing Miami or Cleveland or the Bucks.
Oh man, if we have to play a series against Toronto, that's gonna be.
If you start the playoffs in a series against the Bucks, that's like that's a hard road to begin with. Where if you're the 2 seed, you start against like Charlotte, it's a drastically different road to hoe.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's too early for Stan.
Too early. Next up, cheer boy. That's Corey Cantor. I got the playing music thing on my Zoom. Corey, a friend of the show at this point. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. French.
Dear Glue Guys, I like a formal dear. It starts with a dear. I feel like I had to get an email in,
respect.
not because you're waiting for my thoughts on trade talks, but I needed emotional catharsis after the brutal January that it has been to be a Nets fan. Players, one by one injured, no return of Joey Buckets. How do we all survive this? Anyways, trade talk. Why is Nets Twitter so obsessed? This is a multi-part. 1, why is Nets Twitter so obsessed with Robert Covington? If he was so good, why is he always being traded? I can tell you, Mike, it comes from fantasy basketball. It comes from fantasy basketball. That's why he has a great reputation out there, which has dwindled a lot in the last 2 seasons. I don't think
It's the idea of Robert Covington that he's like a wing player who's very switchable, who can also play center, and he can shoot the 3. He'd be a fine player if they like got him on if he was bought out and he was just added to the roster. I don't think giving up anything seriously for Robert Covington, you should not do that.
In his heyday, he was averaging like 2 steals and 2 threes a game, which I think only maybe Chris Middleton and that's it was doing it. That kind of thing. Rare fantasy category. Second question. Do you think Bruce Brown will be kicked out of town? What a fall from Greece for a former fan favorite. We don't talk much about Bruce anymore, Mike.
I think Bruce Brown's gone. Like, because if you rank the actual tradable pieces on this team, Paul Millsap, I guess, is one because it seems obvious that he doesn't want to be there. They don't want him here. Mazel tov, enjoy your life wherever else you may be. Bruce's salary is like 3.5, which if you throw into a trade, you can get, that's where the Nets really don't have many tradable salaries. Joe Harris is the most tradable salary. He's not playing basketball and they need him. So you kind of look across the roster. If you cobble together Paul Millsap, Bruce Brown, and another piece, Javon Carter, that gets you like close to mid-level exception area for like a 3-for-1, and then the other team just takes those guys. They're all on expirings, and they move about their day.
I think
So I think Bruce Brown may be done.
I'm like transitioning to just being appreciative of the magical season where Bruce Brown was the only human on the planet to like shoot a 70% field goal percentage on like 8-foot unorthodox floaters. That was like nothing like that will ever
Dude,
happen.
that ruined him though. It ruined him because he still does it.
He got
and
a
he's
bag.
not good at the shot.
He got a bag, and like who knows what would have happened otherwise, but
He didn't get a bag.
Not enough of
He
a bag.
got the bare minimum of the bag that he could get.
guy, come on, that's a bag. It's in the grand scheme of bags, it's a bag.
It's a bag, but it's not a big bag. It's not an everlasting gobstopper bag.
Look, it's I'm dying. Sorry. It's an improbable thing that should never have happened to be shooting that high a percentage on that shot. So, and you're right. Maybe there's a dark side to that coin as well, where you start relying on a thing that's just never gonna be there long term.
Yeah.
Anywho, number 3. Which rookie do you think Sean Marks needs to hold on to for long term sake? Is there anyone you're willing to part ways with to make a trade work? All right, so Kessler Edwards, I'm going to assume, is off the table for you, but I bet Dayron's on the table. Is that fair?
Yeah, if we're like picking one guy, Kessler's number one now. He's over Cam Thomas. He's over Dayron Sharp. He's over Marcus Zagorowski. And by the way, I don't know if you know this, Raekwon Gray is having a moment with the Long Island Nets.
I saw some
Alex Stern.
something percolating.
Yeah. So
Wow, you were looking at your phone like there was news coming in. I got worried.
no, Jeff Zucker has resigned at CNN. The guy who runs CNN.
Do you want to? Should we stop the show? Do you need to?
It's just a thing.
Yeah.
Don't you say isn't Kessler the guy right now of all the rookies?
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the thing too. They were talking about it on. Ruko was pointing at the next thing that will happen for Kessler Edwards is figuring out how to finish, and I have I think that he should really focus on his handle first because the handle is informing the finish. The handle is why he can't get into a natural collect and finish motion, which leads to the non-finish. It's really about the handle and his nervousness around it.
You know what I want? I want almost a Rocky Creed-like relationship between Kyrie and Kessler.
Wow.
I want Kessler to move into Kyrie's West Orange house or wherever he lives, and I want them to play flag football all summer, play on the hard courts of northern New Jersey, and just because if Kyrie could impart even just an iota of his ball handling into Kessler Edwards, that is Kessler Edwards is Kobe Bryant.
You know what it is? It's that decaying infrastructure of New Jersey, those craggly streets. You're dribbling your ball, it can go this way and that way. It's just, it's like when it's like in the montage where he's, anyways, who cares?
Kessler's a West Coast guy, smooth
Right,
roads,
those smooth. He's
way too smooth.
pampered by those roads, and
You ever see what's that movie with Jake Gyllenhaal when he was like a West Virginia coal miner's son, where he becomes an astronaut? Do you remember that?
I don't. I don't have any
October
recollection of
Sky. People are yelling October Sky. Yeah. So Kessler needs to go to the coal mines of West Virginia and just dribble inside there in the darkness.
I'm just imagining the scene where he's looking at Bloomfield Avenue and he's like, Kyrie, you want me to look at all these potholes? I can't. Surely you can't. You can't expect
You must go, son. And then Kyrie takes out a blindfold. Yeah. And then there's just traffic going everywhere. He's like, I can't do this. Yeah. And he's like, trust.
Yeah. Good trust.
Use the force, Kessler.
Beautiful.
There's a lot of movies we're throwing in there.
This has been a great show.
Kessler's number, and I don't want to discount. I love Dayron, and I think Cam Thomas is going to be in the league forever. But Kessler's a 3-and-D wing.
He's the guy.
Super athletic.
He's also hitting. He's got a little alternative shot, which is he's stopping and taking a little mid-ranger, which was on display a little last night. So lots to look forward to for young Kessler. Speaking of youngs, next the fourth question, fourth and final: Thad Young or Serge Ibaka? Which former Flame of Nets fans' heart would be more intriguing on this team in their current form? Mike, pick. Gun to your head.
Well, the flamiest one for me, the one who Thad Young actually played for the team, so I have, and he
It's
was
been
one of the few
satiated.
good players when he was on this team. I gotta say, neither of them moved the needle for me though. Like, they don't need another sub 6'9" big who
The Paul
old.
Millsap experience was like, we not do this? We did this. We just did it.
What is Thad Young or Serge gonna do? Like Paul Millsap.
I mean, Serge had a
That was-
great, like, I mean, if he can come back and, be good again, but that's,
Who?
I mean, that's the same. I'm falling into the same trap.
Serge.
Yeah. I mean, he had literally a statistically amazing, when his last season in Toronto was terrific, which was just 2 years ago.
Yeah, I mean the thing that Serge Ibaka would interest me is only that he is he can shoot from three. But like, I haven't watched him enough this year. The Clippers don't. It seems like
They don't like him.
every rumor out there is like he's gone. Like we will buy him out or he will be gone. We don't need him anymore.
They hate him. They don't like him. They don't want to see his face.
But I do like the championship pedigree that Serge brings.
True. And it's again it's the friends of the friends situation, which we're just building
The
a friends, the friend team again, and I think there's a narrative arc there that
But
clicks.
Can I ask Nets fans for a sec? Like we
To the
can
Nets fans,
all.
you want me to-
Hey Nets fans, we want to buy out guys. If you get Thad Young or Serge Ibaka, you're never seeing Day'Ron Sharp play basketball this year. Like if they get one of those like big-ish, force fives, like that just means Day'Ron's never going to
what's
play.
weird?
And
Day'Ron's been starting, and then leave it to Nash. He just played the last 2 minutes of garbage time last night. Like why do that? Why do that to Day'Ron? Why shake him? Why shake his fragile ego right now?
it's a very dull thing to do to Mr. Sharp.
Well done, Mike. Next up, final email.
Wait, no. Quick break, and then we're doing a late break, but then we'll do a last email.
Okay, but then is that the end of the show, or what do you got? You got
Yeah,
something
we'll
else?
do email,
Okay,
and then
we forgot the
end the show.
break. We did forget the break.
Yeah, and we're back. Okay, let's get into it.
Great. Next up, Cheer Boy. This is Aaron Voigt. Could have given that a little bit more zing. Aaron just gets right into it. No frills on this email. I'll tell you what.
Love it.
Should the Nets trade for Miles Turner? Boom. And if so, what would be the right package? Bang. That's it. And he's done.
No, they shouldn't, because they can't. 'Cause they'd have to trade Joe Harris, and I'd rather have Joe Harris than Miles Turner.
I like Miles Turner. I do like Miles Turner.
I like Miles Turner a lot.
And if these floating bodies continue to just, lazy river on through his ankle, Mike, it's worth considering.
Have I
There's
ever
a
told you
literal
the-
lazy river of bone fragments just sliding up and down his leg.
They're drinking. Like, each bone fragment is drinking like a little tiki drink with an umbrella in it.
Yeah.
Like, it's a hell of an ankle. Did I ever tell you the James Dolan, Wyatt Cenac, Miles Turner story?
No.
You know who Wyatt Cenac is? Remember?
I do. Mm-hmm.
Okay, for those who don't remember, Wyatt Cenac, he was on The Daily Show for many years, and then he had his own show on Comedy Central.
Kind of had a
He's comedian.
notable falling out with Jon Stewart. There's a bit
Had a notable falling out with Jon Stewart. I think he lives in Crown Heights.
Okay. Dox him.
something like
Dox
that.
him. Yeah, get an
No,
address.
well, this has nothing to do with the docs. I think like that was part of, he talks about it
Okay.
in his comedy or whatever. But anyways, so this is at the point when Wyatt Cenac, because I talked to Wyatt about this, no big deal.
Wow. There it
And
is.
he shared it on a podcast I was on so that I can share this. Wyatt Cenac had gotten courtside tickets to a Knicks game. And if you remember where James Dolan sits, he sits under the basket courtside very publicly, and you can see him. He's usually pretty slouched over watching the game. And it was an early, I don't know, must have been like 8 years ago. The Knicks were playing the Pacers. And Wyatt Cenac, where he was sitting, was very close to Dolan. He could hear everything Dolan was saying. Dolan was sitting next to someone that Wyatt Cenac doesn't know who it was, but said it must have been someone in like Knicks management on some level. Okay. And the Pacers are playing, and there's young Miles Turner.
Mm.
And Miles Turner runs down the floor right in front of Dolan and hits a three right in front of Dolan.
Mm-hmm.
And Dolan turns to the guy he was next to and says, "Should we get him?" And Wyatt Cenac is so funny. He was like, the way Dolan was saying it was like this, like a rich guy who was saying,
Yeah.
like, should we like acquire, like that should
Acquire
be
that
that.
human. Yeah.
And he's like, had no clue who Miles Turner was.
Right.
Just saw a really tall dude hit a three. And honestly, that's how
That's kind of how I view Miles Turner as well. That's
Yeah.
every time I see him.
and people can make fun of James Dolan. I also, if I own a team and I saw a really tall guy who was athletic hit a three in front of me, I'd be like, we should get him.
I wouldn't let.
Why don't we get him?
I wouldn't let other people overhear me say that. I'll say that. I would know. I would hope I know enough not to let Wyatt Cenac eavesdrop on that. But I love that. That's great.
I would do it. So I know people like to make fun of owners, but I tend to think like that is how I would operate. Is I see a guy play well. It's like kind of how for a while the Clippers under Doc Rivers, like Doc would sign guys who had good games against the Clippers.
Right.
He was like a meme about that. I would do the same thing. Back to Miles Turner. I would love Miles Turner on this team. My question is, Brian, would you rather have Miles Turner or Joe Harris? Because that is the trade.
Joe Harris, I would, but again, we're dealing with Joe Harris, who's got complications with his ankle, and Mike, we're coming up on our championship window is weirdly in a state of volatility. I can't explain it. We should be in the meatiest part of just greasy, breezy wins, all just stacking dubs, stacking chips, and meanwhile, we're just like we've been saying, a drama-infested, who knows what.
Yeah.
Not to say that Miles Turner solves any of that. That's not true. I wouldn't go that far. But, having lingering doubts about players' health and stuff like that. Not that, again, Miles Turner is a guy who's had, plenty of health problems. So,
Yeah, he's currently out right now with an injury.
Yeah. So he doesn't necessarily solve it. But I'm just saying things are on the table, Mike. Things are on the table for me. Okay. I'm not messing around. People gotta get their S together because we gotta win these chips, Mike. Otherwise this experiment would not have been worth it. Actually, that's not true. That's totally not true.
Yeah.
That's
it's
way.
fun,
that is the thing I've said that I least agree with. I think.
One last thing about trade deadline. When I say will the Nets make a trade, I mean like a decent one, not just like Paul Millsap for some bench shooter that is like lower than Bryn Forbes level. Like
Damn.
just
Real bottom of the barrel, beneath low man on the totem, Bryn Forbes.
No shots at Bryn, who's a champion. So good for him.
Bryn fucking Forbes.
Will the Nets make a deal, like a real deal?
Yeah.
I don't think they will. I don't think it's out there. Like I don't think that there's some magical deal for them. I could see them doing what I talked about, which is packaging Bruce Brown, Paul Millsap, and Javon Carter and like 5 second-round picks for, I don't know, name like some decent rotational piece. I don't see them using I thought that they would use their TPE, their Dinwiddie trade exception. The money thing just keeps coming back to me. It's like, do they really want to pay $40 million for Jeremy Lamb? I don't know, Brian.
Mike, we were up late. We may have reached the end of this journey, but it's been a great time. I really enjoyed my time with you today. I didn't think I would, but
I can't say the same. But
Mike, take us out. What do we say?
Thank you all so much for listening. Go on Apple Podcasts, 5 stars. We need them when we want to have
We actually
them.
do. We haven't. I truly enjoy those. So how do we get those back going again? That's fun.
I mean, we got a decent amount, so we really appreciate everyone who has.
Do. We both appreciate what we have, but lustfully want more. Is that fair to say?
Yes, 100%. Go to Apple Podcasts, like I said, netsdaily.com, The Athletic. We are now a subsidiary of the New York Times. So
when are you gonna get that tattooed on your rib?
Subsidiary of the New York Times.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Get a New York Times subscription. I guess.
Let's not call to action this quite yet, Mike. I don't think we're there yet. I know you're excited.
Soon you'll see the Glue Guys podcast like right on the homepage.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
By the way, there's I think his name is like Michael Bellicose. He's a historian. He's very active on Twitter, and he has a lot of Twitter followers because he'll tweet out like old pictures from like really beautiful photographs from like important times like World War II. And this is literally the coldest take ever. It was when Hitler was rising to power in Germany, and it was like US government says not concerned about Hitler. That was the headline from the Associated Press, and I was like, that's a hell of a take.
It's a hell of a take.
Not concerned.
Didn't age well.
Didn't worry you, Hitler. Hitler didn't worry you.
Some takes. Hindsight's 20/20.
But that was not the New York
Hindsight's
Times.
20/20.
Back to the point, the New York Times. Maybe it was actually in the New York Times, but we're now part of the Grade Lady, so we're gonna keep it.
I'm glad that
we're gonna keep it the Glue Lady.
I'm glad that you figured out a way to get Hitler. We did some COVID. We got some Hitler. We checked our boxes. And that's important. But anyways, at BK Glue guys, Netsdaily.com, The Athletic. Get behind that paywall. What do you put in the thing for the paywall for our promotion code?
theathletic.com/glue guys. And the great thing about that, so the deal's always changing. So if you're feeling like, ooh, like the deal I see now maybe isn't good, wait a week, maybe a better deal pops up. But dive in. You're gonna love The Athletic. The Athletic,
Take the
the
dive.
content is so good. Keith Law, who's one of the greatest baseball scouting writers of all time, just put out his top 100 playlist, or not playlist, his top 100 prospects list. A lot of Yankees and Mets on there. A lot of Mets. Wow. So all those Mets fans out there, you're gonna want to read
The
that.
Athletic. Take the dive. What's the tagline? I've been watching Mad Men again, so I'm into taglines right now. What's the Athletic's tagline?
Take the dive.
Just do it. Anyways, let's get out of here. Mike, thanks again. We'll talk. We'll workshop that. Bye everybody.